this season. And in this season is to help youths, mainstream public policy, public dialogue, and advocacy into, the season and the phase that we are in. That's what Policy Shapers is about at the moment, but broadly, Policy Shapers, it's diving into promoting policy ideas and dialogue and advocacy led by young people on issues that affect young people. And so today's policy session, we'll be looking at the art of policy. Okay. So let me go through the slides. So I was almost going to rush because I'm looking at, okay, we've lost a couple of minutes, but it's fine. Thank you, Eben. And so what's the goal of the policy hackathon? Because these policy Saturdays are preparatory to the policy hackathon. So the policy hackathon really is a 48-hour virtual policy hackathon that is aimed at giving youth a platform, to develop policy ideas that can contribute, to the general elections that are coming up in 2023. There's a lot of conversations going on, and we're thinking, okay, what should be done differently? What would we like to see? So this Naija Policy Hackathon is really targeted at that. And so for today, we'll be looking at the art of policy advocacy, but let me just use the next, say, 2 minutes to run us quickly through where we're coming from and how we got here. So we started by going through our own policy hackathon experiences. The policy shapers had gone through this experience before we got here. So that was where we started, and we talked about our MIT experience, our Stanford experience, MIT experience 2020 and then 2021. And then the second Policy Saturday, we looked at the mechanism of writing a policy brief, and Charles Asiegbu and Ezemhoya Donatus took us through those sessions. And last week, we looked at how to develop policy recommendations. We had Adewumi Babayemi and Oyin Odidi, who is also joining us in today's session. Thank you very much. We had them talk us through policy recommendations. They gave us tips of how to come about those, the costs, the benefits, theory of change, the risk, and the impacts. So today we are looking at the art of policy advocacy, because having done all this work, you have to take it to the next step. And we have with us Daniel Stephen and Ayomide Agbaje, who will be taking us through today's session. So I'll pass it over real quick, and thankfully both of them are on the call. I'll pass it over real quick to you, Daniel, so that we can kickstart it. Just briefly tell us about yourself, and then Ayomide, and then we can dive right into the session. Welcome, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you very, very much, Terry. Good evening, everyone, once again, and welcome to today's Policy Saturday. My name is Daniel Stephen. I work with the National Assembly as a policy analyst and researcher. As we go on, we'll hear more about my experience. Let me allow my co-facilitator, Ayomide, to introduce himself. Ayo.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Terry, for the introduction. So my name is Ayomide Agbaje, based in Nigeria, and I'm an advocacy journalist, and I'm also a one champion. I currently do advocacy with One in Nigeria on salient and development issues. So that's pretty much about me. I want advocacy and journalism. So it's my pleasure to be here in another edition of Policy Saturday. And I look forward to a great time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome. All right, Daniel, I will mute my mic now and pass it over to you. I'll be back after the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much once again, everyone. And specifically to the policy shapers, we want to thank you for this opportunity of being invited to facilitate today's section. As you've already seen from the topic today, we are discussing the acts of policy advocacy. And it's very, very important that we set the pace by highlighting the fact that there is something each of us present here is passionate about that we would love to see either our local government officials do something about it, or our state government official get into action and do something about it, or at the national level, create policies that would help us achieve these things that we are passionate about and want to see a change. For some of us, it's about reducing fossil fuel in our community. For some of us, it's about the educational processes. For instance, I know the policy shapers are having something around reform IELTS. So each of us have something that we are passionate about. This passion, when we then get into the action of, trying to influence leaders in the different strata of society to do something about it and create a policy that would help bring about the desired change. In summary, that is policy advocacy. Policy advocacy is a means of persuasive communication, an act of pleading or arguing for your cause, letting those people in authority know why you're passionate about this. And if you forget everything else that we discussed here today, one thing that you should not forget is the fact that the bedrock of any policy advocacy is the concept of ownership, getting these decision makers to own an idea. When you get to that point where an advocacy, a subject that you've been advocating for, is adopted by a decision maker as his or her own idea, and they begin to push for it as if it were theirs, then we would say policy advocacy has been successful. Policy advocacy is successful only when ownership is transferred from you that's brought about that idea to the policymaker, and the policymaker now takes it and runs with it and implements it as their own idea. That is the only time we are considered a success. Other people have defined policy advocacy in other ways. Some say policy advocacy is the process of negotiating and mediating a dialogue through which influential networks, opinion leaders, and ultimately decision makers take ownership of your ideas, evidence, proposal, and subsequently act upon them, just like we've just mentioned. And for any policy advocacy to be effective, it is very, very critical that there's a strategy. Because if you lack strategy, there is no way that your policy advocacy journey will be a success. So it's very, very important that from the onset, you have the strategy of how you want to go about your policy advocacy issue. Strategy is the vision of the whole struggle that links together all our actions and tactics. So in it is embedded multiple things that would help us right from the beginning of our journey and then bringing that end that we envision to the beginning and seeing the process through. There are three very critical, next slide please. There are three very critical questions when it comes to strategy that we must ask ourselves in our policy advocacy journey. What do you want? That might look like a very, very simple question, but if you're not clear from the onset of what you want by the policy advocacy, it's very easy that those that have higher authority would lord it upon you to do their own bidding. Very, very easy question, but it's very, very important that from the onset of your advocacy journey and while you're designing that strategy, that you define what exactly it is you want. In the beginning, it is very important. Yes, you might have the big picture. Say, for instance, a subject like climate change. You want to advocate for governments to reduce on their usage of fossil fuel. You cannot just go directly and tell the government to, make a commitment and say they are reducing their carbon emission by 10%. That is a very laudable goal, but if you start from that end and you don't see results, you might get discouraged. It is important that you break that down. You have the end goal in mind, but you break it down to the small part, okay? Your advocacy can start with getting people in your community to turn off their lights. When you do that, you are beginning to see results that would encourage you that you can incrementally build on to get to that final destination of getting governments to reduce the percentage of emission that is released in the country. So it is very, very important that you have that at the back of your mind. What do you want with your policy advocacy? Why are you advocating what you're advocating for? Number two is to ask yourself the question, what is the political map like at the moment? During this time, what can help you is to do a power matrix and see who has what you want horizontally and what is their contribution vertically, so that you know which strategic partner you talk to, who is for the policy that you're advocating for. When you come to people that are for the policy that you're advocating change for, it becomes easier because they would not give you too much stress. They are already sold out to the idea. So for that relationship in the political equation is to see how to support them more, to get buy-ins from their other colleagues. Some other people in the political mapping, when you finish, you will notice that you have opposition. While some are not really convinced, are in between the line. Okay, but you can easily sway them to your side and accepting to buy the policy that you are gunning for to change. So it is important to draw that political map and know where the power lies in your advocacy journey. Because if you do not know where the power lies, you will put in more energy and more strength at a place where you don't require that energy, which if you had used to convince those that are against the policy that you're advocating for, would have produced more results. And if you have not done that mapping from the beginning and you go through the journey and then realize that, oh, this fossil fuel that I've been, fighting for, apparently this is not the person I should have been speaking to. This is the person I should have been speaking to. It might be too late for you. You might have expended all your energy. So that's political mapping helps you know where the power structure lies and who you need to do more convincing for that would, sway them to implement that policy idea that you're advocating for. And then the last question when it comes to your strategy development is what will you do? What will you do? You know what you want to do. You know who the political actors are and their powers, the power equation among each and every one of them that has a stake in this policy you're advocating for. What exactly now is the strategy for you to, what is the journey like? What will you do about bringing about this change that you want to do? Once you have this strategy document in place, then your advocacy journey becomes easier because you've answered very, very critical questions in your strategy document that will guide the policy advocacy journey. Next slide, please. The next slide will be about the policy advocacy steps. And let me invite Ayo at this point to start it off, and then I'll come. Ayo.
Thanks so much, Daniel. So well done, Daniel, for taking slides. So I'll be proceeding with the policy advocacy steps. Before you advocate, first of all, let me point out that policy advocacy is as much as we want to talk about our cause, we are very passionate about something, or there's a policy we don't like and we truly want to reform it. There's a systemic way to approach such. You can't just go out there and say, I want to do this, I want to advocate for this cause. There are processes, there are steps to take. So first of all, let us know that when changing policies, it's about we advocates turning our attention to the decision making itself, by demanding transparency and access to information. Then advocacy is also all about empowering people to make change. We're not just doing advocacy for ourselves, we're also empowering people to make change. We are involving others, particularly people whose life has been impacted, to be able to take action on their own behalf. So to the steps you have to take, first of all, you have to identify the problem. What is this policy challenge? For example, maybe you've applied to many universities abroad and they've always required you to provide English proficiency test. You feel like this is not something that's okay. This is not something, as an English speaker yourself, you feel like it's an injustice to you. So first of all, you have to identify the policy problem. Then you analyze it. Is this policy course worth taking on? Is this something that is important? Is it something that we make impact? You have to analyze whether it's important or not. Also, you have to When doing your research, you don't just do it for doing its sake. You have to research. You have to get that data. You have to gather the solutions, the policy recommendations. But you can't just say you want to reform a policy without providing alternative, without coming out with the facts to show policymakers. Because no policymaker will listen to you, or no audience will even listen to you when you've not had enough data to prove that this problem actually exists. For example, like the Reform IETS campaign by uh, policy shapers. When you read policy shapers' policy brief about the campaign, you see that they come with a lot of data, how much Nigerians spend on IETS every year, the socio-economic status of Nigeria, how many people write to work every year. These are credible data. So in political advocacy, do not miss that step. Make sure that you research and formulate your data. These are what you do with your policy recommendation on briefs that will make policymakers to take you serious. And also you have to explore channels of influence. You know that this is not only a course, you can't do it alone. You just have to you're just trying to make your own quota to change, and it's a journey only you alone can tread. So you have to explore channels of influence, because let me tell you, advocacy is a very long journey. Sometimes it takes 10 years for a policy change that you're advocating for to even happen. It takes a lot of years. So you have to just make sure that you explore a lot of channels of influence to speed up the process for you. For example, and you can start that by knowing who and where you can reach out to and lobby. For example, I love how policy shapers recently reached out to, or maybe brought on board, Dr. Olumiwa, who is a thought leader on educational issues on Twitter. I love the way policy shapers explore that channel of influence to amplify the advocacy. So in policy advocacy, you have to explore channels of influence, know who can help promote the cause further, even lobbying. Lobbying is not entirely a bad thing. When you're lobbying for something, it doesn't mean that you are lobbying an ulterior motive. Just making sure that what you are pursuing, the cause you are fighting for, gets quickly effected. So building alliances. The fact that when you've identified your policy problem, you are not the only person affected by that problem. You're just like, it may just be the fact that you are the only person the first person to take action, to come out to the public like, oh, I'll be writing IETS every year, every 2 years, and this is an injustice. And you'll be surprised that there are thousands of people in your shoe. So it's your duty as a policy advocate to figure out those who are in the same shoes, those who are affected by that policy. And trust me, there are some citizens online on social media everywhere, even though they may not be directly affected, they are just concerned. Probably it may even be people from the older generation who doesn't even need to write IELTS, but they don't feel like this is an injustice and they feel concerned about it. So as a policy advocate, you have to build alliances with the affected and concerned people. Also, you have to plan very well. You don't just go out there and say you want to do campaigns. You have to be strategic about it. You have to set your goals, what you want to achieve, set some milestones, and the campaign activities, know how you do it, know where you grant media interviews, where you write policy briefs, where you hold Twitter spaces. Make sure that you set out your campaign activities. And action is very important. Like I said earlier, it's a journey you can't take on to alone. You have to collaborate with a lot of people, get supporters, coordinate actions, create communities around it, create public dialogue. So something you can't get alone. You have to just figure out who your supporters are, know where they are, the target audiences, collaborate and coordinate with them. And the last step for me is evaluate. When you've taken on your policy advocacy campaign, you have to continuously monitor and assess the progress you're making, the results you're putting out, the outputs, even the impact it's making. Even if you get just a policymaker to respond to you, for example, if policy shapers tweet at the Home Office on Twitter and they get a response or they get a response to that email, it's a progress, and you just have to continuously assess that, oh, this, I've gotten this decision maker to reply to me. So what step can I make? How best can I respond back? So you have to constantly monitor and evaluate the impact you're making, the results you're making, the achievements you're making, no matter how little. Like I said earlier, policy advocacy can take a very long time. People advocate for issues for years, for 10 years. So that's that for me. So, I will.
Okay, thank you, Ayo. Thank you very much. There are different tools to help us in our policy advocacy journey. In 2014, I was part of a team when the Award at School launched their Global Youth Ambassadors. I was privileged to be part of the pioneer set of young people from around the world that came together to canvass for the rights of children to education. And in 2014, we started a petition known as the Up for School campaign, which is fighting for the right of every child to access to education. And the tool at that time that we used was social media. And in that 1 year that we campaigned, we got over 5 million people from around the world to sign a petition that mandated world leaders to ensure the rights to education for each child is preserved. And that gave birth to the Coalition for Education, a summit that later came up in 2014, where they began another countdown to the 500 days ultimatum that they had given to the United Nations. That's campaign, I saw the power of social media to bring together people from different countries to fight for a singular cause of getting children into school. Social media in our current generation is one of the strongest tools that we have for policy advocacy because it is, less expensive. It brings in the voice of other people. It can easily get you buy-in from other stakeholders that are, also aligned with that advocacy issue that you're advocating for. It has a way of boosting our individual efforts into a collective that amplifies the voice for whatever it is that we are advocating for. In our own case, when I was still a Global Youth Ambassador, it was for education. Right now, we are seeing how social media is also helping the Reform IELTS campaign that is ongoing. Another tool is the digital campaign platforms, platforms like change.org, which allows individuals from different countries to, as an individual yourself, you can go on there, create an account, and then create a petition that you want to call the government's attention to. In the next slide, we will see different target audience. This class specifically is for digital, but we'll see different target audience and how to communicate with the different groups. Change.org allows you to create a petition where you describe what is it that you are fighting for. An instance is a time when the Syria war began and a lot of children could not go to school in Syria. As the Global Youth Ambassadors, we came up with a petition that had people sign for the United Nations to make educational access for Syrian kids a priority. We're able to, through that campaign, get some children out of Syria to go to places that had safe schools. Change.org, under the Award at School Global Youth Ambassador Program, has also helped to amplify the Bring Back Our Girls movement. We're all aware of the Chibok girls that were kidnapped from school, and then the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls kept trending all over the world. Global Youth Ambassadors were also involved through that, and also created petitions on change.org to help. Another platform that has that offers us access to digital campaigns for advocacy effort is also one.org, which Ayo is a champion in. Another tool for policy advocacy is research. You know, some of these our leaders would not be moved by whatever touching stories you tell them. Most of these are leaders that you see, from my experience at the National Assembly, are not oblivious to the fact that there are problems in their local communities, but they choose to give a blind eye because personally, it does not benefit them. Some of them want to see data. You can present pictures of students sitting under a tree in a community, attending class, or seated in a flood to some of these policy leaders, and they would not be moved. They would not be moved. They want to see the figures. They want to see data that would, tell them that, yes, this problem exists, but here are the facts of the problem. They are moved by data. They are not moved by whatever kind of stories that you tell them about a certain challenge. It will not move them. But once you give them data, research and evidence-based data, you can then swing them into your own corner and they begin to advocate for the same thing that you're advocating for and take ownership of that idea that you've presented to them and fight for it in the chambers. So be very, very mindful of those that are not moved by stories, but are moved by data, and use the tool of research. Properly research and analyze data to make a case for why you are advocating for that policy change that you want to see. Another tool that we have for advocacy is writing. We can write memos, we can write open letters to government officials and decision makers. We can write op-ed or articles in the newspaper to create awareness about the policy issue. You can use that to build on. As you do your campaign on social media, you also, follow it up with writing op-eds in newspaper and other platform. Like the next one says media engagement. You can issue press release, you can do briefings and, interview people that have really experienced the problem that you're trying to bring a solution for through policy. Interview them and bring their voices to the public to see why they should, care for that issue that you care for and, buy into the idea that you want them to buy into. There are other tools like the hashtag. Hashtags can help us. There's also Facebook group, which allows you to bring together a community of like-minded people into one space that you can then discuss the issue, strategize together. Like I said, the policy advocacy journey is a very, very long one, and you need people. You need to build a community that would help you advocate together on this issue. You alone by yourself might not be able to sustain the policy advocacy journey at different phases that you would get into. So it is very, very important that you build community, and Facebook groups helps us to build a community of like-minded people that can help you take some of the weight during this journey of policy advocacy. Next slide, please. There are different audiences when it comes to policy advocacy that we should be mindful of. And the process through which we communicate to this different audience is also very, very important. Because some of our audience are experts in the field. For instance, there are people that are experts in climate change issues, that have gone to school, that have studied it fully and are scientists in climate change issues. When it comes to the issue of education too, there are people that have been professionally trained that are experts in that field. So when you're communicating to someone that is an expert in a field, you will not communicate in the same manner that you communicate to that expert to someone that is, non-expert in that field that you're trying to advocate for. So it's very, very important that you know your audience. Who are the experts? Who is an informed non-expert? And who is the general public? With all of these people, the means of communication to them will be different and be targeted. For experts, when it comes to written stuff, you have policy studies, you have research paper where you now put in all those data. If you take something like climate change now and you're advocating for climate change and you bring all those heat waves map and then you bring it to the general public that does not understand the scientific significance of that, you've lost a certain portion of your audience. that you want to reach out to with your policy advocacy. So you need to be very, very conscious and reach out to the different people that you're advocating for at the level where they are. When you do oral presentation of your issue now, that's where you cannot make paper presentations at conferences, look for opportunities with conferences around your issues. Like for those advocating for educational change policy, there's the UN Education Summit coming up in September. Now is a very good time to strategically position yourself to get a slot in there to speak. I know they still have open space for people to come in and then speak if they wish to speak. So it's a good time to position yourself and see what presentations, what conferences are happening around these policy issues that I can leverage to amplify the message that I'm trying to bring. And then we have, of course, audiovisual tools like documentary videos, where you go to communities that are affected, say, for example, Ogoni land that have been affected by pollution. And then you bring real people that have been affected thoroughly by this, follow them from their journey of what the land was when this oil exploration came, post, and now what are the health challenges to people living in that community. When you have such kind of audiovisual documentary, for those people that are not moved by data or statistics, or that will not be moved to read your policy brief or other stuff, when they watch that video, they would also be moved to join your campaign, for those that are audiovisual inclined. And then the last one down there is the information and communication technology. As you all know, this 21st century is an age where digital is key, where we have a lot of tools that helps us to not only post things on social media, but also measure the impact that they are having. We have email campaigns. You can get a list of people that, and target messages to each group specifically. You can have a dedicated advocacy website or page where you upload information related to your policy advocacy, where you upload updates, like the policy shapers through their petition websites regularly post out updates to each of us that have signed that petition. You see where they are on the journey. Like today, one email went out that is telling us about the policy hackathon. So all of these platforms have their own advantages to our policy advocacy journey. You can also use SMS if you have people's phone number. You can send out broadcast messages to amplify the issue that you're trying to advocate for. There are effective strategies for social media advocacy that we must be aware of. Each of the social media platform cannot be approached in the same way. The strategy that would work for you on Facebook might not necessarily be implementable on Twitter. Twitter only limits it to 140 characters, and then you do a long thread if it's more than that. Facebook allows you to make longer posts. A website allows you to, write detailed view of that policy issue that you're trying to advocate for. So it is important that when you're designing your strategy for social media, that you target your message to the different platforms. Know the strengths of each platform and what they have to offer, and know which one best suits what you're about to implement. We cannot stop emphasizing the fact that you need to develop a clear end goal for your social media campaign. Okay, what will be success for you by the time your social media campaign starts? What does success look like right from the onset? It's very, very important that you develop that goal and then keep it in front of you to be a reminder. Sometimes in the policy journey, it will become very, very difficult that even people that you thought in the beginning were part of your journey will begin to fight you along that journey. We've seen it in our policy advocacy stuff. There was a time when we were advocating in the National Assembly for zero budgeting. And someone was part of the team that started that idea to advocate to these policymakers to change the NDDC budget from one that is project-based to a zero-sum budget. And along the line, as we went on in these budgeting processes, this same person that was advocating for zero budget became one of the opponents of this same thing we were advocating for. Why? Because he had been paid. He had been paid. The other camp that felt opposed to it because they would no longer benefit if we switch the process of budgeting for the NDDC, went ahead to buy him because he was a strong voice, bought him over, and then this same person that was a strong proponent of this policy now became an opponent of the policy. So it is very, very important that you have that clear goal in mind for when the journey becomes difficult. That goal will now keep you in check and remember why you started what you are doing. It's also important that you do a complete profile audit, okay? Do an assessment, a critical and objective assessment of yourself. What is your following on Twitter? What is your following on Facebook? Which platform do you have the most following that would allow you get a lot of buy-in from people that are around you that will support the journey? If you don't do a profile audit and know where you are and what kind of influencers you need to join you on the journey, then it becomes very, very difficult to amplify your message. And you know, after a period of time that your message is not amplified to the general public, you can easily get discouraged. So do a proper profile audit of yourself and know where you stand currently across the different social media platforms, and know what you need to impute to build that profile to a point where you can, create more awareness and get people to join your social media campaign. It's also important that you create a regular posting schedule. It makes no sense that you post today and then you don't say anything about the campaign anymore for the next 1 week or 2 weeks. If you're going to stick with one post every day, then do that schedule that you have concrete content to post each day if you've decided to go with everyday posting. If you're not going to do everyday posting, then do 1 week, but be consistent. Whichever schedule you choose for yourself, be consistent at, putting out the content that will drive that policy issue that you're advocating for. Let that message be out there to your audience every time that they see it and are reminded about that thing that you're advocating for. If you stay too long without communicating to and with your audience, then the momentum will be lost. And losing momentum is not something you can afford on your policy advocacy journey. It's also important that you design engaging visual. Not everybody wants to read a lot of words. Instead of having that long Twitter thread, one picture that can depict your message will be very, very powerful. Like for the EndSARS movement now, there's a picture that you see that passes a message that this is the socio-economic generation. So design engaging visuals that will pass your message to everyone. And never forget the power of storytelling. We each all have stories in a way that what we're advocating for has either affected us or affected someone that is close to us. So we can use the power of storytelling to engage people to come on board, whatever it is that we are advocating for. And also don't forget the role of the media. Your local media can help you. They are not out of date. The radio station have their role to play. There are some people that are not on social media that would always listen to their radio. So don't downplay the role of the media in helping create visibility for your campaign. Always engage the media in whatever it is that you're campaigning for. And it's also important that in whatever message you share out, there's always an action alert. Okay? What are you asking people to do? When you share a story of fossil fuel, what is the call to action? Every of your posts should have a call to action and a reminder to them that this is what we want these people to do. This is what we want this policymaker to do. Never close out a call to, never close out any of your content that you put out there without a call to action. Because if I don't see how my role will contribute to making your policy advocacy a success, then there's no point. If you don't directly state what it is that you want me to do that would help that journey become a success, then you lose me along that journey. But when you put something that is there for me to see as an action point, then I'm able to act on it and help in the delivery of success for you on that policy advocacy journey. And lastly, always analyze your result. It's very, very important that you analyze your results. Go back to the drawing table after each message and see, where did I get it right? Where did I get it wrong? What do I need to tweak to make the message resonate more with my audience? And always be open for feedback from people. Always be open for feedback from people, because when you hear feedback from people, it helps you tweak whatever policy design that you want to tweak. Let me hand over to Ayo now to give us a case study of a policy advocacy journey. Ayo, over to you.
Sorry. Before Ayo, can you please take it back to the second slide, no, the other one before this. Yeah, thank you. I just want to snap it. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, for doing justice to the effective strategies for running policy advocacy campaigns on social media. So I'm going to now present to us a case study. We read about strategies to use for policy advocacy. We read about the steps. Now let's go practical. By bringing examples of a policy advocacy as a case study. So, looking at the slide, you can see a case study. Our case study for today is evidence-based budget advocacy around primary healthcare service delivery in Nigeria. And so that's our case study. And our mission for that policy advocacy is to ensure policymakers improve budgetary allocation to healthcare and implement the basic healthcare provision fund to bridge primary healthcare service delivery gaps in all 36 states of the Federation. And our objective for the policy advocacy campaign is, number one, to inform public debate by providing objective analysis of the national budget and policy proposals to increase funding and expenditure for the health sector. And another objective is to bring about policy changes, such as the greater budgetary allocation for programs like the BACPF to address poor healthcare delivery in Nigeria. And another objective is to improve the delivery of primary healthcare by primary health services, primary healthcare centers across wards in the country by using the evidence of poor service provision gathered through monitoring of the PSCPF implementation to hold the government accountable. So just to give a background to this case study, what we want to achieve with this policy advocacy is that the health sector in Nigeria is currently underfunded. I'm sure Daniel can relate with me because he works at the National Assembly and budgets are being approved and appropriated by the National Assembly. So he knows that there's very little of our consolidated revenue fund is being allocated to the health sector. And health is a very critical component of human life, particularly Nigerians. There are a lot of Nigerians living in poverty, and most people can't afford policy health care. And when they have to seek emergency services, they have to spend out of pocket. So in 2014, the National Assembly signed the National Health Act to make a case for the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. And the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund is to provide free healthcare for people living in remote and underserved communities to be able to access the necessary care they need whenever they need to the primary healthcare level. And since that 2014, the first time it was actually implemented was in 2018. And since that 2018, programs like the BACPF, the policy has not been approved. So now to our action points. The action point is to, first of all, engage citizens through digital campaigns to sign online petitions and demand action from the government towards achieving quality health outcomes for poor and vulnerable Nigerians. And the second action point is to facilitate advocacy meetings with the coalition of civil society groups. When doing advocacy like this, it's important for you as an organization or as an individual to find other organizations to and form a coalition between those civil society organizations to push that policy advocacy further. And it can also disseminate credible and data-driven reports of PAC facility assessment, budget monitoring, budget analysis, and state scorecard to analyze the policy problem. And the last action point is to undertake targeted advocacy to key health authorities and decision makers. We can do that. We earlier mentioned that we can write letters targeted at a particular decision maker. For example, in the basic healthcare provision fund implementation, we can write letters targeted at the Minister of Health, the Executive Secretary of the National Primary Health Care Development Agency. So now, we've made a case study now. Now let's look at an example. So at one campaign where I'm currently a champion, we won the other campaign, but the present campaign we are on to is Make Naija Stronger. And I'm going to be using this campaign as an example. So the Make Naija Stronger is an health policy advocacy campaign to increase access to quality primary health care service in Nigerian underserved communities, and the implementation of the basic healthcare provision fund. Next slide. So this campaign is very important. The Make Naija Stronger advocacy campaign. I'm going to be dropping the link in the chat box for you to check it out. So this campaign is a case study. Now, if you're using your phone, you can just zoom in the picture in the slide to see the content. So reading out the content. So this is a campaign page. For example, Daniel used the example of the Reform IELTS policy campaign by policy shapers. Now this is another example of a campaign page for a policy advocacy. So reading the campaign page here, it starts with, can you see the heading, add your voice to make Naija stronger? The introduction, healthcare is the rights of every single Nigerian, but sadly, is the right that millions do not enjoy. You can see how the storytelling, it's about our parents, brothers and sisters, how the campaign page is and the content. So what the campaign page was to achieve is that they want citizens to sign petitions to make government programs like the basic healthcare provision fund to work in order to reach the poorest and the most vulnerable Nigerians. And you can see that after the petition, there's a public letter, a short public letter directed to the Minister of Health saying, "Dear Dr. Osage Inariye, healthcare is the right of every citizen. Delay will cost life and damage future of millions of Nigerians." So this is an example of an effective policy advocacy campaign that almost every Nigerian can relate to, because health is truly a fundamental right for everyone. And if our primary health care is very weak, it causes a lot of damage. When people are in dire situations and they do not have access to affordable and quality health care to be able to save their lives, it kills dreams. It makes people die untimely. So, and even maternal care, a lot of people die when giving birth, and childbirth in Nigeria is not something guaranteed. Antenatal care is not well guaranteed at the grassroots level. So this campaign is something we can all relate to. And you can also check out the link I dropped in the slide in the chat. Yeah, so I can see a question here. Is it time for questions yet? So thank you so
Yes,
much.
it is. Yes, it is. Thank you so much, Ayo. Thank you, Stephen. So because of time, we're kind of running very late. In fact, we have exhausted all the time, but we have one question here. If you can quickly respond to it in, say, 1 minute, that would be great. How do we sustain our advocacy campaigns through unstable or uncertain political climates? How do we do that? Just very quickly, any takers, Stephen, Ayo?
Okay, thank you so much, Wayne, for that question. So your question stated, how can we sustain our advocacy campaign through a certain political climate? Okay, now the question is very right in time because we are approaching 2023 now, and we're about to have a change in government. And who knows, we not even, there's no assurance that the ruling party will begin to retain seats. So in Nigeria, the Nigerian political climate, it's in a way that power shifts hands, different parties going on, and so that goes, so that come. So how to sustain advocacy campaigns in that in such an uncertain political climate like Nigeria, is to build structures. Structure in the fact that uh, most, and when I'm talking about structure, I'm not talking about people with the government, decision makers, because a decision maker probably has 4 years to spend. If you have a decision maker that's taking interest in your campaign, there's a limited time he spends in office. So structure is by building coalition with civil society groups, the citizens themselves, that whoever they want to, whoever emerges in government, the citizen can always go further to press for that policy change and continue the advocacy. And also civil society groups, they have organizational structures, and they have access to different levels of, some have access to different levels of governance, and these are the structures you can only fall back on in an uncertain political climate like Nigeria. So citizens, civil society groups, and prayer organizations are the way to go to sustain your advocacy campaign.
Thank you, Ayo.
If I can add something to that.
All right, real quick.
When you're doing your policy strategy, when you're doing your political mapping, it is very important that you add to that a risk assessment.
Even, can you go through that gradually? It's
very important that you do your risk assessment, and this political uncertainty is one of the risks for every campaign strategy. But when you plan for it ahead of time, then it becomes, just like Ayo says, easy to handle it through the strategies that he has mentioned. So that political, that's risk assessment during your policy advocacy is a critical component of your strategy document.
All right, thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you, Ayo. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us through this session so that we don't extend the session longer than necessary. Any more questions? Because we've just had one question. Does anyone, at least let's give opportunity for at least one more question. Any takers? All right, great.
Hello, can I ask a question?
Oh yes, go ahead, Donatus.
Okay, I don't know. I would like to know, are there laws that manage or prescribe allowed approach to policy advocacy? Because sometimes advocacy tends to be confrontational, so I don't know, is there certain ways we take it that it becomes unlawful? Because I haven't seen any aspect of that in the presentation.
All right, thank you, Talks, for that question. So there are actually laws in place, but the challenge is that advocates don't know that these laws exist. I'll make an example. There's the Freedom of Information Act. And like I say, there's a Freedom of Information Act, which is the FOI law. So the FOI law has been domesticated by almost every state in Nigeria. That way you're making your advocacy, you have the right to approach any policymaker, any decision maker, even the governor of your state, that I need this information. Your budget, it must be open. And let me know the amount you spent on this particular road construction. Let me see the contracts, everything must be open. You have the right as a citizen to advocate and demand from anything from the government. So it's called the Freedom of Information Act. So it kind of gives advocates
All
that.
right. Yeah, that I found that response very insightful, because when the question dropped, I was thinking, oh, I've never thought about that, my thinking would have been, yes, most advocacies are confrontational, but it can be peaceful as well. It doesn't have to be violent. So, and that's within the bounds of the law. So thank you very much for that very, very robust response. So the 5 minutes that we gave earlier appears that we are reclaiming it back, but we'll probably draw the curtain here. And Owen just dropped something in the comment section now, that the approach is also key. Having the right to do something and how you go about it are two different things. So yes, people have the right to advocate, march, but it has to be peaceful. That's also very, very important as well. Then we still need a lobbying law in Nigeria, through which is part of advocacy. Yes, that's very, very true. And so long as I know, Nigeria still permits advocacy in terms of peaceful protests, in terms of engagements. Our lawmakers are not outrightly aggressive when you come to them with a proposition. They might keep quiet, they might not answer you, but to a large extent, they're still largely accommodating as well of these advocacy issues that come to their desk. So I'm going to draw the curtain here. I'll just pass it over quickly to Eben, who is our president of the Policy Shapers, and our chief host here, if he has any closing comments, and then that will be all. So I remain your moderator for today's session, Oteheri Akirota. Eben, over to you.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Terry. I'm not the president, please. All of us are obviously driving this together. But thanks a lot, Terry, and thanks to Daniel and Ayomide for the wonderful presentation. Also, just shout out to all of the guests and facilitators that we've had so far. Thank you. You can hear more from them during the hackathon itself that begins on Friday, August 12th, and will run up until Sunday, August 14, 2022. We've received about 100 plus applications so far. The registrations close on August 1st. So please do well to still share this around. The link is bit.ly/Naija policy hack, all in lowercase. Share this around. Also check our website for more information about the hackathon. And let's see how we can work together to develop policy solutions and contribute, to the policy agenda for the elections, and ensure that the critical challenges that affect young people have center stage during the campaign season. So thanks again. Thanks to Terry again for wonderful moderation, and see you during the policy hackathon. Thanks everyone. And as always, this will be on our YouTube channel. So all the videos from the Policy Saturday as well will be there. All right. So thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Hi, everyone.